In 1835, the settlement that would become Milwaukee existed as three rival communities along the western shore of Lake Michigan, shaped by river confluences and territorial ambitions within the recently organized Michigan Territory Administration under emerging regional leadership structures. Juneau Town, Kilbourne Town, and Walker's Point developed in competition, divided by the Milwaukee River, with bridges absent or contested, reflecting distinct land claims and political loyalties that hindered coordinated growth during these formative years across divided urban settlements. Geographically, Milwaukee's position at the meeting of three rivers and Lake Michigan created a natural harbor, encouraging trade while also complicating jurisdiction, as each settlement attempted to control access points and collect fees from incoming goods and travelers daily. Early economic activity centered on fur trading, small-scale agriculture, and the export of timber, with sawmills along riverbanks processing logs floated downstream, forming the basis of a regional economy tied closely to Great Lakes shipping routes in early period. Conflicts between Byron Kilbourne and Sullivan Juneau escalated into what became known as the Bridge War of 1845, when rival groups destroyed each other's bridges, underscoring the fragmentation that delayed infrastructure development and unified governance across divided urban settlements. Incorporation in 1846 merged the competing towns into a single city government, reducing conflict and enabling coordinated planning, though lingering rivalries influenced ward politics, infrastructure priorities, and the distribution of public resources throughout the emerging municipality for years. German immigrants began arriving in significant numbers during the late 1840s, bringing skills, capital, and cultural institutions, including newspapers, breweries, and social clubs, which reshaped Milwaukee's demographic composition and strengthened its economic resilience and civic identity within growing city. Yankee settlers from New England contributed political structures and educational initiatives, advocating for public schooling and civic order, while immigrants introduced varied traditions, creating a layered social environment marked by both cooperation and tension within neighborhoods and workplaces. Economically, Milwaukee evolved into a grain shipping center, as farmers from Wisconsin's interior transported wheat to the city, where it was stored, inspected, and shipped east, integrating local production into national and international markets through lake and canal systems. The opening of the Erie Canal in the century had lasting effects, linking Great Lakes ports to Atlantic trade routes, and Milwaukee benefited from connection, accelerating its growth as a transfer point for agricultural commodities moving toward eastern markets. Shipbuilding and harbor improvements supported expanding commerce, with piers and warehouses constructed to handle increasing volumes, while dredging operations maintained navigable channels, reinforcing Milwaukee's role as a critical node within the regional transportation network of the mid-19th century system. Railroad development began to complement lake transport in the 1850s, connecting Milwaukee to inland areas and diversifying trade routes, though initial expansion remained limited, reflecting capital constraints and competition with established water-based transportation systems across surrounding regional economy. Politically, Milwaukee reflected broader national tensions, including debates over immigration, temperance, and slavery, though Wisconsin entered the Union as a free state in 1848, shaping local alignments and influencing the city's evolving identity within the national framework of governance. Socially, ethnic communities formed distinct neighborhoods, maintaining language, religion, and customs, while gradually integrating into civic life, contributing to a pluralistic urban structure that balanced cultural preservation with participation in shared institutions and economic activities across growing city. Public institutions expanded, including schools, churches, and municipal services, reflecting population growth and increasing administrative complexity, as city leaders addressed sanitation, policing, and infrastructure needs within a rapidly changing urban environment shaped by migration and economic expansion during period. Health challenges emerged as population density increased, with outbreaks of diseases such as cholera highlighting inadequate sanitation systems, prompting gradual reforms and investments in public health infrastructure, though implementation remained uneven across different districts and communities over time. Milwaukee's legal and administrative framework evolved alongside growth, with ordinances regulating trade, property, and public behavior, reflecting attempts to impose order on a rapidly expanding population and to reconcile competing interests among diverse economic and social groups across city. Religious institutions played central roles in community organization, providing education, charity, and social cohesion, particularly within immigrant populations, where churches served as anchors for cultural continuity and mutual support in an unfamiliar and developing urban landscape for residents. By the late 1850s, Milwaukee had established as Wisconsin's largest city, with a diversified economy and infrastructure, positioning it as a regional hub whose development patterns would influence future urban planning and economic strategies beyond this early formative period. Transportation integration between rail and lake systems increased efficiency, reducing costs, and expanding market reach, while also encouraging further settlement in surrounding areas, reinforcing Milwaukee's centrality within a broader network of production, exchange, and distribution across the region. Despite progress, disparities persisted, including economic inequality and uneven access to services, reflecting structural limitations in governance and resource allocation, which would continue to shape the city's trajectory and present challenges for future administrations beyond 1860 in coming years. By 1860, Milwaukee's transformation from fragmented settlements into a coordinated urban center illustrated how geography, migration, and economic opportunity combined to produce a structured city, establishing foundations that would support continued growth and adaptation in subsequent decades ahead. During the early 1850s, Milwaukee entered a phase of accelerated consolidation as municipal authorities expanded jurisdictional control, standardized regulations, and invested in coordinated infrastructure projects designed to stabilize growth and reduce the lingering fragmentation inherited from earlier rival settlements. Infrastructure improvements focused heavily on bridging the Milwaukee River permanently, replacing earlier temporary or contested crossings, which facilitated reliable movement between districts and allowed commercial traffic, labor, and administration to function within a more unified and efficient urban system. Economic diversification intensified as milling operations expanded alongside brewing enterprises established primarily by German immigrants, whose technical knowledge and capital investment transformed production, creating value-added industries that extended beyond raw agricultural export toward processed goods and regional consumption markets. Grain inspection systems developed this period introduced standardized grading practices, ensuring consistency and trust in Milwaukee's wheat shipments, which attracted participation from farmers and merchants, strengthening the city's role as a reliable intermediary within expanding national agricultural trade networks. Geographically, Milwaukee's harbor improvements required dredging and breakwater construction, responding to shifting lake conditions and sediment accumulation, while enabling larger vessels to dock safely, thereby increasing shipping capacity and reinforcing the city's strategic importance along Lake Michigan's commercial corridor. Rail connections extended Milwaukee's influence inland, linking agricultural hinterlands to port facilities, reducing transportation time and cost, and encouraging production, which in turn amplified the city's economic throughput and positioned it as a distribution center within the regional economy. Population growth accelerated throughout the decade, driven largely by continued European immigration, particularly from German states, as political unrest abroad pushed migrants toward American cities offering economic opportunity, land access, and relative social stability within expanding frontier regions. These demographic shifts produced a multilingual and culturally complex population, where German-language newspapers, schools, and civic organizations coexisted with English-speaking institutions, shaping Milwaukee into a distinctly bicultural city with overlapping social networks and shared economic dependencies. Municipal governance adapted to this diversity by expanding administrative capacity, introducing more structured policing systems, and refining taxation mechanisms, as leaders sought to balance public order with economic development while accommodating competing interests across different communities and occupational groups. Public education systems expanded gradually, reflecting both Yankee reform traditions and immigrant demands for literacy, though instruction often remained segregated by language, illustrating the negotiation between integration and cultural preservation within Milwaukee's evolving institutional framework during the 1850s. Industrial activity remained closely tied to agricultural output, as flour mills, warehouses, and shipping facilities operated in coordination, forming a tightly integrated supply chain that linked rural production with urban processing and distribution, reinforcing Milwaukee's dependence on surrounding farming regions. Commercial credit networks developed alongside trade expansion, enabling merchants and producers to finance operations, though financial instability remained a persistent risk, particularly during periods of national economic fluctuation that could disrupt both local markets and long-distance trade connections. The Panic of 1857 significantly affected Milwaukee, reducing demand for agricultural exports and constraining credit availability, which led to business failures and unemployment, revealing the vulnerability of the city's economy to external financial shocks despite its growing structural complexity. In response, local institutions and businesses adjusted cautiously, diversifying trade partners and strengthening internal networks, demonstrating an emerging resilience that would become increasingly important as Milwaukee continued to expand within a volatile national economic environment during the late 1850s. Social tensions occasionally surfaced between native-born residents and immigrant populations, particularly around issues of language, religion, and political allegiance, though these tensions were often moderated by shared economic interests and the practical necessity of cooperation within workplaces and neighborhoods. Politically, Milwaukee reflected broader sectional debates of the era, with anti-slavery sentiment generally prevailing, aligning the city with emerging Republican influences, while immigrant communities sometimes prioritized economic and cultural concerns over national political divisions shaping local electoral dynamics. Temperance movements gained traction during this period, particularly among native-born reformers, leading to conflicts with German communities for whom beer consumption held cultural significance, illustrating how moral reform efforts could intersect with ethnic identity and generate localized political disputes. Urban planning remained uneven, as rapid growth often outpaced systematic development, resulting in irregular street layouts and inconsistent infrastructure quality, though gradual improvements reflected increasing recognition of the need for coordinated urban design to support long-term expansion. Sanitation and public health challenges persisted, as waste management systems lagged behind population density, contributing to periodic disease outbreaks, which prompted incremental reforms and highlighted the necessity of more comprehensive municipal investment in environmental and health infrastructure. Religious and civic organizations continued to anchor community life, offering support networks, education, and cultural continuity, particularly for immigrants adapting to new conditions, while also contributing to the broader civic fabric